Well, a very, very happy Wednesday morning to everyone, and welcome to the John Quintero Show on YouTube. San Diego Sports Talk. We're here Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 9:30. Very happy you joined us. And we got a big show today. We have one guest coming up at 10 o'clock. One of my favorite great guy, a guy that really loves sports, does a great job covering all the sports in Southern California, longtime columnist for Los Angeles Times. Dylan Hernandez is going to join us. We'll talk a lot of baseball with him. I'll probably ask him a little bit about USC and UCLA football. And we'll also maybe get into maybe a question or two about the Lakers. Lakers back in action tonight against the Miami Heat. Lakers really reeling right now, but we got so much to cover today. And we're going to talk a lot of baseball on the program today. Before we dive into everything, number one, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. The response that we've gotten on this podcast has been really, really special, and I certainly appreciate that. And again, if you're tuning in maybe for the first time, or maybe you've tuned in on a regular basis and haven't subscribed, it doesn't cost a cent. Really appreciate if you would subscribe and like the channel. And again, you can follow me on Facebook at John Quintero and on X at Coach Quintero 44. Okay, a couple of things I want to get to before we dive into baseball. Number one, you've heard me from time to time over the last few years talk about the holiday happy hour. It's something that got started a number of years ago by Jay Paris, a longtime sports writer, and Jay joins us from time to time on the program. And basically, what it was an event to, bring friends together, people from, really all walks of life. But it also turned into where we invite a lot of baseball people, a lot of football people, and everybody's welcome. And our annual get together is this Friday, December 6th, 4 o'clock on at the Leucadian. It's the bar my dad and uncle ran for almost 50 years. And we no longer own it, but we are having the party there. And this will be the third year we've had it. This is the 10th year of the party, by the way. And over the years, we've had AJ Preller there. We've had Buddy Black, Wally Joyner, Mark Loretta, Kevin Towers, God rest his soul. We've had John Carney regularly comes, the great Charger kicker, who I saw last night at the Silver Pigskin Awards. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But everybody's welcome. And you just come in, you grab a beer, and have a lot of fun. And this year, unfortunately, we're going to have a special toast at 6 o'clock. A guy that never missed our holiday happy hour, the longtime baseball agent, Barry Axelrod, a marvelous man. Barry passed away earlier this year, and at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a toast in his honor. Barry Axelrod, he represented Mark Harmon. He represented a ton of baseball players, ton of great baseball players. But Barry never missed our party. He lived in Encinitas for many, many years. Him and Kevin Towers were best friends. And when Kevin took the job over with the Diamondbacks, Barry left his agency and worked over with Kevin for a few years. But a marvelous man, passed away earlier this year. And we're going to honor Barry at 6 o'clock. So that's going to be the holiday happy hour this Friday at the Leucadia, north end of Leucadia. And it'll get underway 4 o'clock on, most of it runs done by about 9 o'clock. But it's a great place, a lot of fun. And we'll look forward to seeing whoever can make it out there. And again, everybody's welcome. Okay, last night I went to the Silver Pigskin Gala. And Paul Rudy's been doing this a long time. And Paul and I, over the years, have become pretty good friends. He has me on from time to time on KUSI, to talk about, anything going on in the world of sports. So last night I figured, you know what? I could sit at home and I could watch this TV show from 7 to 8:30 and not have to fight the traffic. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go to this. It's a great event. I've gone quite a few years. And it had been very easy last night to stay home, but I wanted to go and be a part of it. And I went down there last night to the Rock Church in Liberty Station, fantastic place. And boy, I got to tell you, Paul Rudy, Brandon Stone, the whole gang at KUSI, they put on a first-class performance honoring a lot of athletes. And the man that walked away with the silver pigskin for this year was Achilles Smith Jr. of Lincoln High School. Of course, his dad came out of Lincoln many years ago, went to Grossmont College, went to the University of Oregon, first round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals, and his son, 6'6", going to Oregon. Very talented, very likable young man, I might add. I've heard him interviewed several times, been very impressed with him. And the Lincoln Hornets are going to be playing on Friday night in the state semifinal, Southern California regional final, and they win that game. They'll play for the state final a week from now. So we wish the Hornets and head coach David Dunn all the best. But hats off. They put out a beautiful program and really highlight the players. And, for a guy that did a high school sports show for 25 years, and a lot of you remember, I started out that high school show on a Saturday morning in 1990. And then 1991, we moved it to Friday nights. And I did that up until 2015. 25 years I did that. And it was crazy how we got scores back in the early 90s was amazing. Calling 7-Elevens, convenience stores in the area. In those days, I wasn't covering just San Diego. I was covering Orange County, Inland Empire, LA City area. It was crazy. Yeah, but I'm very happy to see Paul Rudy and the gang out there at KUSI continuing to cover all of our great high school athletes. And they did a great job last night. They highlighted the ladies flag football championships. They had a few ladies there talking on their behalf, winning a championship. And I was a big proponent of girls flag football. And I talked with Coach of several teams this year, and it's just gone bigger and better. They started the first year, a year ago, they started with a little over 40 teams. This year they had over 70 teams. And I would imagine next year we're going to even have more. So it gives the girls something to do in the fall if they're not volleyball players or cross country runners or field hockey players. So good thing. Yeah, but again, congratulations to all the folks involved with that production last night at the Rock Church, the Silver Pigskin Gala. Okay, now I want some comments today from you folks. I want some comments. We've got our YouTube page. There's a spot there you can write in comments, and you can send them in. And we're going to get to some today before I get out of here. But we're going to get into baseball, and I'm going to get into the commissioner a little bit. I'm not a big Rob Manfred fan. I think anybody that's listened to me for more than 5 or 10 minutes over the years, when we get talking about the commissioner and rule changes, you know how I feel. I think some of the rule changes have been good. The pitch clock, I have no problem with. I mean, I got tired of sitting there and not seeing a ball in play for 7 or 8 minutes. Okay? Guys are taking forever to throw. Get out there and throw the baseball. The pitch clock, it doesn't even come into play. After the second year of this year, it hardly ever comes into play. I mean, occasionally, maybe once a game, maybe once every 2 games, that everybody's made an adjustment. And I think it's sped the game up. It's made for a much better game. There's more action in a shorter period of time. You got to put the ball in play. And I also think when you look at the Padres, they went back to playing some old school baseball last year. They shortened up with 2 strikes, put the ball in play, didn't strike out a high amount. I mean, there were so many games last year with the Padres. They struck out 5, 6 times rather than 12, 13, 14, 15 times like they've done in the past. Victor Rodriguez made an impression on those guys, and they bought into it and did a really good job. And more teams need to be able to do that. Forget the launch angle. Launch angle's BS. If you've got a kid that's taking lessons and the coach that's working with him has him work on the launch angle at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, get a new coach. I'll tell you that right now, because anybody that can throw the ball with some juice up in the strike zone, going to blow it by your kid. He's going to be swinging under. He's going to be swinging at the sky. Stay on top of the baseball. Okay, with that being said, I'm all for the pitch clock. Now, as far as the shift, they outlawed the shift 2 years ago. I'm okay with that. And the reason I'm okay with that, see, I think a manager ought to be able to manage any way he wants. But the problem was that baseball hitters can be very dumb at times. And what they tried to do, they tried to hit through the shift and over the shift. And what did that do? They started striking out and hitting pop flies rather than just going up there, taking their natural stroke and hitting line drives, use the middle of the diamond or go the other way. They just tried to hit through it. Guys' average went down. Overall batting averages, on base percentage were going down. They had to do something. I'm okay with going back to playing old school baseball where you can't run that shift. Okay, that was more of a players thing. They screwed up because they made no adjustments, nor did they try to make any adjustments. Okay, so the pitch clock and the elimination of the shift, I'm fine with. What I'm not fine with is this ghost runner at second base in the extra innings. That's garbage. That's not baseball. That's like playing in an ASA softball tournament when you're from San Diego and you're playing outside of San Diego, and they want to speed the game up so that people can get on the road to get home and have their kids home late Sunday night for school on Monday morning. Okay, that's a club sport rule to speed up the game. We don't need that in Major League Baseball. These guys are getting big money. They can play a full inning with nobody on base, and if it goes 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or 18, who cares? Okay, I want to see the game played the right way. That runner in the 10th inning, the best team doesn't win. I mean, so many goofy things happen with that runner on second base. So I don't like the ghost runner. I call it the Manford man. It's garbage and always has been garbage and it'll always be garbage. Now you get to the postseason, then you play baseball. Let's play baseball during the regular season. What else I got here? Oh, the two minimum pickoff over at first base. Now we've seen the running game come in because everybody was playing for that 3-run homer. You know, that's garbage too. The running game is getting going again, but it's because the pitchers and the catchers have been hamstrung by this rule. You can go over twice, you go over a third time and don't get them. It's an automatic balk. The guy gets second base. That's garbage. And I don't want to take anything away from Shohei Ohtani because he had a record-setting season. But do you think Ohtani's going to steal 59 bases if they had that rule to where you could go over there as many times as you possibly would want to? No. And Ronald Acuna Jr. 2 years ago, would he steal over 70 bases? That would have never happened. I mean, both those guys could steal bases, don't get me wrong. But it wouldn't be as prevalent as it is right now. Now, here's the kicker. And this is what I want your opinion. I think this is such garbage. And by the way, Rob Manfred is going to retire after the 2029 season. And I've sent out tweets. I've said it on the air. Can he speed up his retirement? I am so done with this guy for so many reasons. I mean, the game, I talked to players that played for many years. I've talked to Hall of Famers. And they think the game is garbage right now. Now, I think right now we have some incredible talent in Major League Baseball. And I will never, ever demean players because I know how tough this game is. This stuff isn't only tough skill-wise, but mentally in between your ears, it beats the living hell out of you. It really does. But I've talked to Major League players, and they said as they watch these games, they don't even recognize their sport anymore because there's so many different things going on. Now, the one that came out the other day, and I can't believe this, and I'll tell you my theory on this whole thing. The golden at bat. Do you know what the golden at bat is? Well, I didn't know about it until a couple of days ago. Rob Manfred, the commissioner, said he's been toying with this idea with the owners about, let's say that Aaron Judge strikes out to end the 8th inning with the bases loaded. Okay? In the 9th inning, they get a couple of runners on the Yankees, and you can put anybody in that you want to in the game at that time. So if Aaron Judge struck out to end the 8th inning, the first two hitters for the Yankees get on in the 9th inning. Now you can bring Aaron Judge up. This is like playing wiffle ball at the local Boys and Girls Club. One time a game, you can take a guy and move him into a spot in the batting order, even though he may have made the last out or may have batted, 2 innings ago and his bat isn't coming up. You can knock out the guy that's supposed to hit and put in your big bopper. That changes the game unbelievably. How about the manager that has to navigate this? And he's going, hey, we got this guy, this guy, this. Okay, I want so and so to come up and pitch, and you get out of the inning, and you've used your best bullet. Now they can bring that big heavy hitter up against somebody that's a lesser pitcher. That's garbage. I mean, I can only imagine everybody keeping score. How are they going to put that in the scorebook? I mean, Rob Manfred continues to pull the wool over the eyes of the owners. You know, a lot of these owners, not all of them, but there are a lot of owners that have a lot of money and they're smart people, but when it comes to baseball, they don't know crap. They really don't. And there are a lot of people in high level positions in baseball right now that are not qualified to be in those positions. And Rob Manfred, to me, has outlived his usefulness. I think it's time for him to move on. The problem is you'll probably get another Rob Manfred in there. And, he said, the owners have been really receptive to this. And I'm sure all the minions that sit around Rob Manfred's table in New York, they're just bobbing their head. Oh, yeah, Commissioner, that's great. Because he's one of these, he's a vindictive guy. If he doesn't like what you're selling, he's going to distance himself from you. I got a real problem with this commissioner. I think we need a new baseball commissioner. Give me your opinion on that. The other thing that really bugs me about Rob Manfred, and there's so many things, I'll never forgive him for wiping out over 40 minor league baseball teams a couple of years ago. But the owners, especially the owners that don't want to spend money, they love this guy because now they've wiped out at least 2 minor league teams from their organization, and they just put that money in their pocket. How many teams really want to win? Now, there's teams that have a lot of money. Yankees, Mets, obviously the Dodgers, but they're throwing their money out. They've got the money, and I know there's no salary cap in baseball. They've got the collective bargaining tax and all that stuff if you go over a certain amount. But there's some organizations that really want to win. You tell me the Chicago White Sox really want to win? And I hope Will Venable, who hopefully we'll get Will on the program before spring training. I love Will Venable. But I was on the phone with a baseball person last night when I was driving the Silver Pigskin Gala, and he knows Will, and he had congratulated Will like I did after he got the managerial job of the White Sox a couple of weeks ago. I hope Will's not a sacrificial lamb. That organization is a disaster, an absolute disaster. Minor leagues, minimal what they do. They have minor league, but they're not really dialed in. And I know that from having guys I know play in that organization recently. It's been a disaster down in the minor leagues. One hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. And now Will Venable comes in to skipper the ship, and I hope he's not a sacrificial lamb. He's a good guy, knows baseball, loves baseball, and he'll work his tail off. But Colorado, I look at Buddy Black, who is one of my best friends in baseball. The guy loves managing. He's an outstanding manager. He's an outstanding human being, knows how to handle ball players. Get him some help. I mean, spend some money. The Monfort family, spend some money. I mean, I look at the West right now, the NL West. I think a lot of teams in the NL West are throwing up their hand. They can't compete with the Dodgers. Padres, this is a big year for the Padres, folks. Because after this year, there's no guarantee that Dylan Cease, Michael King, Luis Ariz are going to be back. In fact, maybe they need to trade one of those guys. They've got to get that payroll down. And the reason they got to get the payroll down is they need a left fielder and they need a catcher. But there's so many things wrong with baseball right now, and I love it. It breaks my heart because I love the game. And it's been a huge part of my life outside of my family, the game of baseball. And I'm just looking right now at the minor leagues. There's so many good, talented kids that never are getting an opportunity now to play professional baseball because they've wiped out over 40 teams in the minor leagues. And a lot of the owners are going, yeah. But the money that they save by not running those ball clubs, they're not putting back into their major league ball club. They're just putting the money in their pocket. And like I've said before, and I had a hard time believing this. I really did. And I didn't want to believe it. But many years ago, I was told, hey, John, I know you're really into this stuff. You love it and you want to win and blah, 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 blah. But there are a lot of organizations that don't want to win because it costs them more money and it causes more problems when you win because there's higher expectations. And I go, what do you mean? They go, well, when you win, players want more money, coaches want more money, the fans expect more. A lot of owners, they want to win just enough so you, the fan, will stay engaged. You'll come out to the ballpark, you'll buy season tickets, and you'll do all that. And again, the Padres now, let's face it, there for a couple of years, Padres spent big money. Now they're going the opposite direction. I have no idea what their budget's going to be this year, but they haven't done anything. And I know the winter meetings start on Sunday. I mean, they need a left fielder. I'm not paying Profar. I'm sorry. I'm not paying Profar 12 to 16 million. I don't think he can do, again, what he did this last year. He had a career year. 11 years in the big leagues. He had a career year. I don't see him doing that again. And if you look at the way things trended off, I'm not going that direction. Now you got a situation, you lose Kyle Higashioka. I never thought Higashioka could come back to begin with. And the reason why, he's not a frontline catcher. He's going to go to Texas, and he's very fortunate he gets to play with Bruce Bochy. And Boch will love him. I'm sure Boch does love him. That's why they went after him. But he's going to split the catching spot with Jonah Heim. And Jonah Heim, nice catcher, swings the bat a little bit. But Higashioka is going to be a good tandem there, I think. But Higashioka, last year he made $2.18 million. He hits the 17 home runs. He hits 220 and drives in 45 runs. He had 50 some odd hits last year. And he gets a 2-year deal for $13.5 million. Final year of arbitration. He went from making $2.18 million up to getting a 2-year deal for over $13 million. And then he's got a third year worth $7 million that they probably won't pick up. I mean, by that time he'll be, almost 37 years old, and he'll get a $1 million buyout. I mean, he got a great deal. And you know what? My hats are off to Kyle. He's a pro's pro. I would like to see him come back at an affordable price, but you can't do that. Now, what are you going to do behind the plate? You got Brett Sullivan, who's a 4A player, good guy to have in your organization to come up and help you for a week or two. But he's not an everyday guy, and he's not probably the backup catcher long term. Maybe on the Padres he will be, because right now they don't have a whole lot. They keep talking about Ethan Salas. Ethan Salas a couple of years away. I mean, I want to see Ethan Salas this year. If he goes to Double-A, I want to see him swing the bat a little bit. And I know what he did in the Arizona Fall League, all great. I want to see him do it over a long period of time. He had 206 last year in high A ball. He's got great catching skills, good catch-throw guy, does a nice job. I'm high on him. But let the kid have an opportunity to develop. He's 18 stinking years old. We don't need him up here in 2026. Okay, give this guy an opportunity to develop to where he can come up here and be ready to where he doesn't, everybody's going to struggle to a degree, but let him have some success down in the minor leagues. Hitting 206 for an entire year, and he's got some power. I mean, I like this kid. I remember the first time 2 years ago, the Padres put him in an exhibition game, and he grounded out. First big league at bat in spring training, grounded out to second base. I go, man, this guy's going to be pretty good. He is going to be good. He's got a chance to be great, but let the kid develop. I'm tired of reading articles and hearing about Ethan Salas. Oh, man, they're just going to get a catcher for a short period of time because Salas is going to be up here before we know it. No, he's not. Not unless the Padres just promote him to promote him. But now you got Brett Sullivan and you got Luis Campusano, who I mentioned on Monday, has closed his stance up. He's playing for Licey down in the Dominican Republic during the winter ball. I saw the one home run he hit on tape the other night. He's hitting in the low 210s. He's hitting like 210 right now. So I don't know. I mean, right now we got Luis Campusano and we got Brett Sullivan. Those are the only two catchers on the Padres 40-man roster. And if you look at the free agent market, holy Toledo. I mean, I may need to come out of retirement and get behind the dish. Can't throw anymore. I don't know if I can get my catching stance anymore. But man, I'll tell you what, catching around baseball is not great right now, but I think the only way the Padres can get a catcher, they're going to have to make some kind of trade. They're going to need to definitely make a trade. But Higashioka got a great deal. And then I hadn't even talked about the shortstop position. One day Hassan Kim is going to the Giants. The next day he's going to the Dodgers. And we'll talk with Dylan Hernandez coming up in a few minutes about Hassan Kim. How many more guys can the Dodgers sign, for crying out loud? I mean, what are they going to do with Teoscar Hernandez? And Juan Soto apparently is close to signing. You know what? I have not one time ever believed that the Dodgers would sign Juan Soto. I saw John Heyman made a comment the other day. I think it was Heyman. And he said, yeah, Soto was not real happy in the Padre clubhouse. Well, you know what? I don't think a lot of people in the Padre clubhouse were real happy with Juan Soto. But we're going to be talking a lot of baseball. We're going to get to this gentleman right now. This guy's very busy. One of my favorite guys. He's always been so loyal to me. I love him. And he does an incredible job. He's not afraid to go out and talk about in his articles about the tough things. And that's our buddy Dylan Hernandez from the Los Angeles Times. Mr. Hernandez, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm on with you. So, it's always privilege is always mine here.
Hey, I got to ask you right off, good family time over the holiday?
Yes, a little bit unorthodox. I took my family to the LSU USC game, for the opener. That was in Vegas. And I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she sees the casinos as a giant mall. So, we were off, and so she said she wanted to go to Vegas. And, when it comes to my daughter, I just roll over. I am a total pushover parent, so we spent it in Vegas.
Oh, that's great, Dylan. I want to start off talking about Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball. I'm not a big fan. I haven't been a big fan. And this thing the other day came out with the golden at bat to where, Aaron Judge could strike out to end the 8th inning. And then the Yankees could get 2 guys on in the 9th inning. And here comes Aaron Judge trudging to the plate again. It just changes the dynamics and the strategy of the game for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that I don't think it's going to happen. I really like to think it's not going to happen. And I do think, right. I mean, I think, let's go back to the beginning here, right? I think many people's problem with Manfred is that I think he's a businessman first, right? And he's kind of like a baseball guy second, right? Whereas, and I do think, though, the one great thing about baseball is that you do have a lot of baseball first people involved in the sport. So I just don't see, while he might say stuff like this, right? And, during the whole sign stealing scandal thing, right? He referred to the World Series trophy as like a piece of metal or something, right?
Yeah.
But the sport always I feel kind of that majority, the baseball loving people wind up winning these arguments. And that's my expectation is that's what's going to happen here as well.
Dylan, I think some of the rules I've liked. I don't like the Manfred man at second base in the 10th inning. I think that changes the dynamics. Not a big fan of you can only go over to first base twice. But the pitch clock has worked great. And I think we're seeing more action in a shorter period of time. The games are moving at a better pace. And really, after the first few weeks, when that was implemented in the 2023 season, we haven't seen that many pitch violations. I mean, maybe one a game, maybe one every other game. I think that's gone really well.
Yeah, I think so too. And even the ghost runner thing, there's a part of me that doesn't like it because, like you said, it changes the dynamic of the game, right? That said, there is a reason I think for that rule in that, right? Especially if when you kind of see these things every day, and for those teams that it's not just about that game, it's really about the next week or so, right? I mean, you have one of these 15-inning games, your bullpen just gets blown out for the week, causes a lot of problems from that standpoint. So even that, I'm kind of with you on this too. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to baseball. That said, I understand it, and I agree with you. I do think that these things have kind of made it better, right? It gets just a little bit quicker, but not enough to where I don't feel that kind of the game is fundamentally changed in any way.
The Dodgers, They've had two, I think, very significant signings. Obviously, signing Blake Snell, he's a difference maker. And I think, and Tommy Edmonds a friend of mine. I mean, he comes on our program from time to time. He's a San Diego boy. I mean, he's a good old school baseball player. The Dodgers locking him up, and he's only 30 years of age. They're going to get him really through his prime years, and a guy that always keeps himself in very good shape.
Yeah, I think and I think what we're seeing here, right? I was really kind of curious what this offseason was going to look like for them in the standpoint of, last season obviously they got Ohtani. Ohtani agrees to kind of defer all this money, and I felt right they had to do something more, right? So they went out, they got Yamamoto, they got Glass now, and so honestly, going into this offseason, my expectation was that they were going to kind of maintain the status quo, right? And kind of okay, they're going to lurk with free agents, but not really kind of pursue their guys. And if somebody, right, their price comes down and they feel there's a bargain, maybe they go and get a guy then. I think what we're seeing now really is that because of all the revenue they've generated, all the money they're making off Ohtani, the way, again, these contracts are kind of done now, like, I think they just kind of entered this kind of new phase, right? And it's happening at a time, too, where a lot of these teams are having problems with their regional sports networks, right? I mean, the Padres are one of these teams. Let's not forget why, they were basically forced into trading Juan Soto, right? I mean, it wound up kind of working out for them. They got a really good return for it, and they were obviously a better team this year than last. But that was kind of right. So the economy of the sport is not good right now, but the economy is good for the Dodgers. And they're kind of, I feel, taking advantage of this. And they're seeing this as, hey, you know what? Kind of the whole like, hey, when they zig, we zag. Right now, the zagging is spending money, and they have it. They're spending it, and I'm expecting this to, I don't think, say that they're going to end up with Soto necessarily this offseason, but I do think that it kind of every year, there's if they have a need, they're going to go out and spend it, kind of like they did with Snell here. Edmund is obviously a guy they really liked, who can fill multiple positions. He wasn't like super expensive, right? So they kind of locked him up. I think that was kind of more about, okay, this is kind of like one of these glue guys that, if you're going to have a championship team, is obviously a really valuable piece. To me, the statement was Snell, though, right? Where, I mean, just a year ago, they could have had Snell for, they had made this offer, they could have had him, he's a year older now. And this year, there was no kind of waiting around. There wasn't any, hey, let's wait to see if his market collapsed. They identified him as his guy, and they went out and they grabbed him.
A couple of things. Do you know offhand how much do the Dodgers actually get a year from TV, and how long is that contract? Do you know?
Let's see. Well, it was what was it, like a $6 billion 25-year deal? Like, yeah, I can't do the math here, but it's a lot, right? I mean, we were, my colleague Bill Shaken called up yesterday. We're kind of talking about some TV stuff, and the Royals just kind of announced, right? They've gone into the streaming thing, and I think now they have 40,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And so we kind of did the math, and it's like it's not even $10 million a year, right? The Dodgers are obviously kind of in the hundreds of millions, right? If not like high tens of millions. So it's they're just operating in a completely different space right now, and I can't overstate just how much that Ohtani contract makes a difference, right? And from the standpoint of, again, it's a $70 million annual salary, 68 of it deferred. Now you don't have to have that like money like an escrow or anything, right? It just kind of has to be accounted for somewhere. So a company like Guggenheim, right? That's the Dodgers parent company. It's an investment company. They can now take that money and invest it, right? And say, they get, I don't know, right? 15, 20% annual returns on that. That money grows, right? And, now the portion that they give to Ohtani doesn't grow. So they're making money just by setting that money aside. And somebody, I think Jack Harris wrote a story about this soon after Ohtani signed that deal, that over kind of the lifetime of that deal, they might make an extra $1 billion off that Ohtani money, right? So, they're operating in a completely different world, I think, than most teams. And it's going to be interesting to me is kind of like how the next tier responds to that, right? I think, the Yankees, the Red Sox, obviously, the fact that they're in on Soto, the Mets are kind of the one team probably that's kind of with the Dodgers in terms of not having limitations on how much they want to spend. But it's kind of the next tier of teams. It's going to be interesting how they respond. And it's also going to be interesting, I think, in the NL West, right? I mean, I think kind of similar to how the Yankees kind of dragged up the AL East for so many years. Now we're going to see the Dodgers, the Padres. I know they haven't been winning lately, but the Giants have been investing money, right? Or they've been in on big guys. The Diamondbacks have kind of done it a little bit differently, kind of more building through the farm system and stuff. But I do think kind of watching that arms race in the NL West is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm anxious to see what the Padres are going to be able to do. I mean, they've got significant issues going. They got to figure out what they're doing with Profar. I don't think they can afford to pay him $12 to $16 million a year. Higashioka, who made 2.18 a year ago, got a nice 2-year deal for over $15 million from the Rangers, and he's a backup 220 hitting catcher. He had a career year, 17 home runs, but him and Profar, they both had what you'd call career years. One guy's 32, the other guy's 35. I don't think you can bank on that again. And then the Padres also have to figure out what they're doing in their starting rotation with Musgrove being out the entire year. Plus, they've got Arise, Michael King, and Dylan Cease all going to be pending free agents after this year.
Yeah, and I think, looking at it from my vantage point, I love when the Padres are good or another team of the NL West is good. I just think it's good for the sport. It's for those of us that are out at the ballpark all the time, it obviously every time you have a series like that, it brings extra excitement, even if it's like in June or whatever. So as somebody who wants to see the Padres competitive, and for somebody who wants to see this rivalry be what it can be, yeah, you really want to see Profar on that Padres team, right? Just what he brings from like a personality standpoint, because the Dodgers, it's kind of right. Their star players are relatively quiet guys, almost borderline boring, and the Padres just had so much personality, and the contrast is what made that fun, and the whole thing that Profar had, robbing the Mookie Betts of that home run in that playoff game and kind of playing it off. I thought that was fantastic, So from my standpoint, I really want to see Profar, but I agree with you, right? And that's probably realistically right now. Major League Baseball, obviously, after the Bally's thing happened, right, had to help the Padres cover their payroll. Like, my guess is that there was some kind of unspoken agreement here, like, hey, you guys need to start pulling back your spending, right? I mean, that's what the commissioner is there for. The commissioner, let's not forget, is hired by the owners, right? And most owners do not want to spend money. The reason all these rules are in place right now regarding finances is because owners do not want to spend money, And so, I think it's going to be tough from that standpoint to maybe bring them back. And, the Padres are realistically probably at this point where, you talked about these guys having career years, is finding that bargain, right? That finding that guy who's going to come here on a 1 or 2 year deal that you think has been underperforming and who might, kind of being in this Padre environment, find a way to kind of unlock something that's going to help him get his next deal. Now, that is hard to do on a year-to-year basis, right? Is to kind of hit on all those types of marginal free agents. The Angels have been trying for years. That's been what they've been attempting to do, right? They keep getting these guys. Yeah, they've tried, right? I mean, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And, a couple of years ago, I remember I thought they had like a pretty good year doing that, where like half of their guys hit, maybe a little bit more than half of those guys hit. And it still wasn't good enough, right? So that's a tough way to operate. Now, the Padres do have some leeway in the sense that they have guys in Tatis and Machado that you can really build around, right? And they do have good starting pitching, like you said. They're going to have to address that long term. But as far as kind of winning now, which I think is what they have to really focus on, right? They have a window right now, and obviously for the Padres, these windows, it's not like the Dodgers where the window's kind of constantly open. This is a window that they have that might not open up again, so they have to. The way I kind of look at it is they got to push in this year and really kind of go for it. Because I've been talking to people in baseball. Some people still say, hey, you know what? I still think the Padres are better than the Dodgers, even after the snub thing, right? And I think that's a completely reasonable argument to make, right? I mean, at this moment, Teoscar Hernandez is not a Dodger, and I know you kind of look at those top 3 guys in the lineup and go, man, like, how do you get around that? But at this moment, you can get through the rest of the lineup, right? And so, I just kind of think if you're the Padres right now, you got to go as much as maybe the league will let you.
Dylan, I know the report out yesterday and this morning that Juan Soto is close to making a decision. After watching Juan Soto here in San Diego and just not so much on the field, but just as far as hanging around the ball club and that, I don't know if he really fits with the Dodgers. And I haven't been one that has thought that the Dodgers really are sincere in wanting to sign him. Do you think they are?
I think they are at the right price, right? I mean, I think if he agrees to something again, right? I mean, we've seen so far with all their big deals, they've all been heavily backloaded. Generally speaking, Scott Boras does not like doing that, right? He made an exception for Snell because he did get something in return, which is a $50 million signing bonus. And, the taxes that Snell's going to pay on that will be as a Washington resident. So that $50 million will have zero tax, right? Washington has zero income tax. So there was kind of an exchange there. I think if they can get him at the right price, sure. And my guess is that their offer is going to be fair. Now, my guess is that somebody like the Mets, somebody like the Yankees, maybe somebody like the Red Sox, teams that are more desperate, are going to offer more, and so he's going to end up going there. But this is how generally the Dodgers have kind of operated, right? It's like, and again, even what they're doing now, I feel is even more aggressive than what they've done before. Because a lot of times it's been, say, take the Bryce Harper thing, right? They were in on Bryce Harper in the sense that, like, hey, look, like if the 10+ million, the 10-year deal that you're looking for never materializes, we'll be here. We can give you something shorter, right? You can opt out of this thing and head back into the free agent market if you want. We're like your backup plan. Now I think they're actually kind of legitimately in the conversation. I just don't think that they're going to go past a certain point to get him, right? They're not going to overpay to get him, like some of these more desperate teams might want to. As far as him being a fit, the truth is if you look at the Dodgers' 3 superstars, they're all kind of, they do a lot of stuff on their own, or at least they used to. And the one thing here, and this is why, I've heard some things about Snell too, and I just don't think these things are going to be an issue just because there's kind of a bigger culture now, right? I think with the Dodgers, it's kind of right there. You have organizations that have a solid established culture. I'm thinking, in basketball, say like the Golden State Warriors, in the NFL, the Chiefs, kind of where it doesn't almost matter who's kind of there. Like you just kind of fall in line because of how much, the track record of success, ultimately makes you respect that, and so I just kind of don't see, because I was, when we were talking about this, the last couple of years, since Justin Turner's left, there hasn't really been a guy in that clubhouse, right? Teoscar Hernandez, I felt was a glue guy in the sense that, when Ohtani first got there last year, he wasn't afraid to, start talking to Ohtani. I really feel he, accelerated Ohtani's acclimation to the Dodgers, but he wasn't kind of the hey, we've lost, however many in a row, or things are going really bad. If anything, it kind of sounds like, right, when Tyler Glasnow went down, the responsibility to kind of adjust the team fell on Dave Roberts, right? And Roberts kind of really took that, hey, we got Hall of Famers in this room. We can still do it. A lot of times that's the kind of speech that the leader of the team gives, right? And they don't have that. Yet everything is kind of operating fine because the team is winning. And so I don't think it's going to be a problem. I know what you're talking about. I've heard kind of similar things, obviously, and I think Soto has, he understands. I think there's a certain maturity that he has that makes him kind of understand. Hey, look, this is a business, right? And as I know fans don't want to hear that, but he understands that. And now, because of that, though, maybe he's not going to be kind of the rah clubhouse guy, and he's. I'm guessing when he was with the Padres, he was viewing that hey, I know they're not going to have the money to re-sign me, right? This is a stay. I'm just building my value and getting out of here. Yeah, that can be a little bit challenging, depending on the circumstances. But again, with the Dodgers, Teoscar Hernandez was in that position last year, right? Where that's what he was there to do. It was 1 year, rebuild your value, get back out in the market. And it's just everybody just kind of seems to fall in line when they come here. I don't really think there have been any kind of trouble guys. I think they've kind of brought from the outside, the last guy I could really that sticks out in terms of not fitting in was Puig. And, he was just a guy that they just signed. They watched him take batting practice twice in Mexico City. They signed him, and right. It's a little bit different when a guy's coming through your minor league system and, hey, this is our guy. We like him or not. So I just kind of don't see this being a problem, at least with the Dodgers.
Hey, last question, because I want to get a quick comment on UCLA and USC football, and even a quick comment on the Lakers. But I got to ask you, I haven't talked to you in a long time. How are you and Freddie Freeman doing?
We're like buddies now, I guess. Yeah, it's spring training. It was kind of like, hey, look, I need to let's have a chat, right? I think we talked for about 2 hours. I do think, somebody brought this up to me, the baseball player that I really like, who I think is kind of very kind of sensitive to things. And, because obviously my issue was with Freeman was, hey, look, he took the extra money and then he's like crying when he goes back to Atlanta. And it's like, dude, you made a choice, right? Like, stop trying to play victim here. You wanted the money, you went for the money, and that comes at a cost, and I think, anyway, this ball player that I know kind of just said, I'm just guessing he really didn't want to get booed, right? He's a really sensitive guy. He just didn't want to get booed. And, the more I kind of have gotten to know Freeman, I think that that's probably the case. I do think he's deep down a nice guy, yeah, obviously this year was really kind of trying for him a lot, in many ways, right? I think, the thing he was going through with his son and stuff, the fact that he had, the whole thing with his dad, right? And then what they went through, with Freddie losing his mom and Freddie's dad obviously losing his wife. I think, the fact that he was able to kind of do all this in LA. And I do think, again, him playing hurt really kind of showed what he was about as a player, right? And that was kind of one thing I from the beginning, though, I remember soon after Freddie and I had that blow up, I was at a restaurant with my kids, and, they had a guy on second base, and I was telling my kids, like, watch, he's going to hit this to the opposite field, right? He's going to shorten up here. He's not going to do anything dumb. He's going to get that guy in. The guy might have been on third base, but anyway, sure enough, right? Short swing. And you just really kind of admire, I think, kind of the consistency of the way he approaches the game. Again, kind of that pain threshold. I really thought like I was never going to see anybody like Clayton Kershaw again, just because, I mean, how many times do you see a guy kind of come through that, even in a sport full of alpha males, right? Kershaw just kind of puts winning ahead of everything else. And I really thought Freddie Freeman gave us that type of performance this October. So, yeah, we're good.
That's good. Well, I'm glad, because I think he is a good guy, and I know you're a great guy. One last question on baseball, and it could be leaning towards the Dodgers. We've heard the Padres. What's your gut feeling? You've been to Japan. You went over there before Ohtani ever came to the United States. Roki Sasaki, what do you think is going to end up happening with him?
I think so. I think the determining factor is, what does he want out of his career? Does he really want to be the guy? Now he doesn't talk much to the media. Part of this is because I think in Japan you don't. How do you say this? They don't commercialize their trauma in a way, right? So, in our country, like say that you become a star and let's say you had something tragic happen to you as a child, kind of the first thing you do is like you tell your story, right? And it's a great way to connect to the fans. In Japan, people keep that stuff very private. And, he lived in a town that was affected by that tsunami in 2011. He lost his father. His father was a firefighter. His father got swept away. He lost a set of grandparents in that. And, so because of that too, like, right, the media is also very kind of mindful of like, hey, this is like a traumatized person. Let's not bother him too much, right? They've kind of kept their distance. So we don't know this kid at all, right? Even the Japanese media, the people that are around them, don't know him. And now when the Chiba Lotte Marines, the team that he played for in Japan, posted him, they put out a quote from him. And kind of at the end, he did say, I am going to go over to the United States to try to be the best player in the world. Now, Ohtani said the same thing when he came here 6-7 years ago. Now, that said, with Ohtani, people knew him. Ohtani used to talk, he doesn't talk now, but he used to talk every day in Japan. And so people kind of knew, like, hey, this guy means it, right? I don't think at that moment that we doubted at all. This came in a press release. Again, I don't know if, Chiba's letting him go early before they can really cash in on him. So is he saying he wants to be the best out of an obligation, because he feels obligated that, hey, if I don't state that kind of goal, like, why are they letting me go? Or does he really mean it, right? And that's the question that we don't know. Because I think if he wants to be the guy, he cannot play with Ohtani. He has to beat Ohtani, right? And I think this is going to be one of those cases where, a lot of times, you kind of know the person and that kind of informs you what they might do. This is going to be the opposite case. We don't know much about the person. What he chooses is going to tell us everything that we need to know about him, right? Does he really want to be the best? I think if he wants to, again, be the best, frankly, the Padres are a great place to land, right? I mean, you have, in Yu Darvish, kind of this very willing mentor type who, if anything, right? If I'm going to be honest, like I wish like you had like a little bit more confidence, right, in himself. Darvish is always kind of, whenever you talk to him, he has a very much like a service type of mentality, right? So, but I think that would also obviously make him a tremendous mentor. It's going to make him, right? What better way to get acclimated to the major leagues and to have Yu Darvish next to you, right? I can't imagine a better situation that way. The Padres have never won a World Series, and you're the guy that makes it happen by beating Goliath, with Ohtani on it. So I can't think of a better, right? If I'm, Sasaki, and I really want to be like, leave my mark on the game and be that type of player that he says he wants to be, I don't think he goes to the Dodgers. Now I'll take this for what it's worth. Somebody I talked to in baseball who knows a lot of stuff said, "Hey, like keep an eye on the Pirates."
Wow.
Yeah. Again, because one of the things is, again, this kid really does not seem to kind of like the media stuff, right? And they do in Japan. People talk about kind of the generation of kids that grew up in that area that got affected by that tsunami, right? That there's kind of a dark cloud hanging over them a bit, right? And and I think he knows too, right? Even when it's not really the case, I think even right, you and I have been around a while. I mean, we saw TJ Simers do his act, right? But
Right.
I think even kind of the modern American reporter compared to Japan are pretty aggressive in the way they ask questions, right? In Japan, everybody's very considerate of things, and he probably doesn't want to talk about this, let me not ask, right? Even though so just the way they cover athletes is different. I think he's aware of that, right? And because the American reporters have that reputation in Japan, and so maybe he does want to just kind of stay out of big market altogether. The Padres, right? San Diego, probably considered, right? It's not LA or New York, but it's still a bigger market. You go there, Darvish is going to be there. There'll be a ton of Japanese media. Maybe it's better to go hide out in a place like Pittsburgh if that's what he's really like. So, yeah, this is a very long way of me telling you that I have no idea where he's going to go. But yeah, I think, again, to me, the Padres are just in it as much as anybody else.
All right, let's just real quickly here, and we'll let you get on with your day. And certainly appreciate the time. It's great seeing you, man. You look great. Let's talk. Just give me a quick comment on USC and UCLA football. As the Trojans are going to they're eligible to go to a bowl game. I don't know where they're going to go or if they're even accept a bowl. I would think they should, but we'll wait and see. And Deshaun Foster in his first year finished 5-7.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's you can't. The easy thing is to kind of point to like the NIL stuff, right? And look, I just saw some kid just decommitted from USC and the top recruit, and now he's going to A&M. And I have heard, just from, just kind of this NIL stuff and just how crazy this world is now. I was talking to somebody at an agency. They're looking at high school kids now, to represent in NIL stuff. I've heard, prices for SEC baseball players, right? It's like a decent salary. You would not mind drawing that kind of salary, like if you're just like a college graduate. So the easy thing is to kind of say like, hey, like they're just kind of getting outspent. They can't compete. And they've kind of been put in this weird thing where they're big, but not big enough to really go after the big stuff, But I'm just kind of looking at SC recently, and they just don't have, there wasn't that one pass where it's like it hit the guy in the hands and you're like, okay, he had to catch that. But there were probably like 10 balls in that game where it's like, man, they used to have guys that could catch balls like that, right? And so you can't really pick on it. It's just that they used to have dominant playmakers, right? Jordan Addison being the most recent, guys like Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they would just kind of, right? The SC always had playmakers. Even when their quarterback play was kind of iffy, they always had playmakers. They just don't have those guys right now, And so this is now kind of becoming a multifaceted problem where, if you're Lincoln Riley, it's like, okay, well, you're not recruiting well, right? Your game management has always kind of been under question to begin with. And it just kind of felt like, things have kind of spiraled in the wrong direction. I still say this. I still think D'Anton Lynn, their new defensive coordinator. That guy's going to have a job in the NFL relatively soon, right? The way he turned around both.
Oh, we lost Dylan Hernandez there. Try to get him back up here momentarily and finish our interview with him. Hey, real quick, a couple of things until we can try to get Dylan back up. Tonight, San Diego State going to take on Fresno State, Mountain West Conference opener tonight. And this is a game the Aztecs should win, no question about it. Fresno State coming in at 3-4. They've got a new head coach, Vance Wahlberg, who used to be at Pepperdine. We'll see what the Aztecs are able to get done. And then they got a non-conference game on Saturday night out at Viejas Arena against USD. And we've got Dylan Hernandez back up. Dylan, go ahead and finish your comment on USC, and then I'm going to hit you up real quick on the Lakers.
Yeah, so they don't have kind of those playmakers right now. So I think it's part of it is a talent issue. Part of it is kind of a coaching issue. I thought, again, bringing in Lynn as a defensive coordinator was a great move. He's going to be in the NFL soon. That guy, I think, head coach at a major college. That guy's going places. But it's just not quite good enough right now. And, you can sit here, and Riley's been kind of trying to talk about incremental progress here and there. But you know what? At a school like SC, results are everything, right? You either win or you don't. And there's kind of no in between right now. And he's also not dealing with this well, right? I mean, he closed practice to the media, which, and look, I don't care. I have not been to a race, right? I've gone to maybe.
Well, heck, it does you a favor. You don't have to go out there.
Yeah, right.
Look,
I don't go. So don't take this, right? Because people are always like, oh, you're just mad you can't go to practice. No, I don't go to practice anyway. Okay. But, I do think it shows something, right? There's this kind of okay, I don't like being blamed. I don't like being asked these questions. This past week he got asked after the game, what makes you hopeful that this thing is actually moving in the right direction, given that your record's gotten worse every year? He's like, well, I'll address that later, and he's just going to kick the can down the road. And probably next thing we know, it's going to be spring practice and we'll have moved on to the next year. So I also don't know if he kind of has the kind of strength of character, so to speak, to lead them out of this, Yeah, they're in a tough situation now. And again, it becomes very easy, right? And I've always said this about the Lakers too. Any program or any team that defines itself by championships, you cannot have zero hope, right? Because the whole thing, your whole fan base, what they live off is that hope that you're going to win again, right? And, you can talk about LeBron and he doesn't have it anymore and this or that, or that it's false hope. LeBron gives you hope, right? It's anytime the team goes on a 3-game winning streak, you're like, well, they still have LeBron, right? And that's why they had to ultimately sign Bronny, because they needed LeBron back, because there's no LeBron, there's no hope. And the issue right now with USC, I feel, is there is no hope right now. So,
real quick on the Lakers, we'll do this again and we'll get into it deeper. But, I told my wife this morning, I go, hey, it's going to be a great night of basketball. We got a Laker game at 4:30. And she goes, oh, no. Because I take the Lakers, for some reason, that's, as much as I love the Padres, the Lakers, I've been following them since 65, 66 season. They lost in 7 games that year. And the reason I followed them was a guy named John Fairchild, who was from my area down here. He grew up in Encinitas, went to San Diego High School, BYU, and ended up playing 1 year with the Lakers. That was 65, 66. And his dad used to drink at my dad's bar, okay?
Okay.
So that's how I became a Laker fan. But I fell in love with Elgin Baylor and the whole crew. And I take those Laker games so serious. And they're playing such bad basketball right now. And I think J.J. Redick's actually doing a pretty good job. I wasn't sure he was going to be the right guy, and I don't know if he is the right guy. Time will tell, but I was never a big fan of his, especially as a player when he was at Duke and all that. But with that being said, I think he's done a pretty good job. He's surrounded himself with some pretty good assistants. But, man, I'll tell you what, if this doesn't work, it may be time for Rob Pelinka to walk the plank.
Yeah. The players, I mean, right. I remember I had a friend who was coaching high school basketball, and one year he had some 6'10" kid transfer in, and he told me, I'm going to be a really good coach this year. Point being, right. The players win the games,
right.
As my good friend, Eric Winalda, right. San Diego,
right.
San Diegan and former U.S. national team player used to tell me, players win games, coaches lose them, referees ruin them. Yeah, you got what you have. I mean, it's more or less the same team that they ran out last year.
Right.
It's gonna right, and LeBron's just kind of older now, and you do. I mean, he's starting to kind of make you ask, right? How much does he have left in the tank? I mean,
and then he'll go for 40 tonight.
Right. Yeah, but that's kind of the part of age, right? I mean, I read Wright Thompson's famous Michael Jordan article. Where he wrote about how in his mid-50s, Michael Jordan would go down to the court to challenge these guys one-on-one, because he'd be upset that they lost or something and he would win. The problem is he couldn't walk for the next week, right? So, that's what age does to you. And trust me, like I feel it now, right? I can't.
Likewise.
Covering the playoffs, for example, killed me, So, yeah, they kind of have that problem right now. And, honestly, obviously the Bus family is beloved in LA, right? I still think that whatever it is, Jeannie is still a very popular person in Los Angeles. The reality, though, is the team has not been the same since Jerry Buss, right, kind of stepped away from this thing. And to me, organizations, it always starts at the top, right? I mean, we saw it here with the Padres, right? Peter Seidler said, hey, you know what? We're going to spend and we're going to go for this thing. And that's what changed everything. It starts at the top. And I just kind of think that right now they're just kind of stuck in this place. They're not right. It's still kind of run like a small family business. If you kind of, the Clippers have a problem with like their branding, right? They're still whatever it is, as much money as Ballmer is pouring into this thing. And even, kind of the non-salary cap stuff. Right, that you kind of look at, right? All these machines to help players recover, and analytics and scouting, right? Clippers are spending a lot of money. Now, that said, they have a branding problem. They're the Clippers, and people don't want to play for them. The Lakers are kind of the opposite, right? They have the great brand. Probably all that ancillary stuff, though, isn't there. It's not necessarily like a place where you want to play. Do you want to go play with LeBron? He does kind of take a lot of the oxygen up. Obviously, like they got a guy in Anthony Davis to go there. But they're kind of stuck in this place right now. And, again, that was why I was like, look, and I know people are some people are upset about Bronny being there. But I was like, look, if that's the price of getting LeBron to come back, you got to get him back because otherwise it's just hopeless. I mean, you look back at the years between Kobe and LeBron, right? And they actually drafted like a lot of good talent there, right? Ingram and, Ball and, they had Kuzma. I'm sure there's another top pick I'm like not even thinking about right now, but like, they assembled some decent talent there. Yet that wasn't kind of what the Lakers do, right? It's not like, hey, we're going to draft a bunch of guys and wait 6 years for this to all come together. The Lakers are about having hope that you can win a championship. LeBron is kind of the only source of that hope right now, and that's why they had to. Hey, if it meant drafting his son, well, then you have to draft his son. I'm sorry, because otherwise you're kind of going back to those pre-LeBron days. And that was just kind of like a way. I mean, why were they even playing at that point, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I agree with you. Something major has to kind of be done after this, And again, the way that it's the charm of the Lakers, it's also probably to their detriment that it's kind of run again like a family business, right? Rob Pelinka's in the family right now, and there are not many people I don't think that Jeannie Buss trusts to kind of go out, and she's not her dad, obviously, in that she can see, Jerry Buss seemed to be able to see into the future and see things other people couldn't see and kind of understood what worked and could really kind of be that guy that helps be the foundation, that builds a team. I don't think we're going to see that kind of happen here. And so they're basically kind of stuck in the cycle, honestly, of they're going to play out LeBron's years and hopefully, Wembanyama or somebody like that falls out of the sky into their lap. I mean, that's basically what happened here. I mean, right, they did not recruit LeBron. LeBron just went to them and said, hey, I will play for you. I want to live in Los Angeles. I will play for you, And at that point, you're kind of at the mercy of the market. You're at the mercy of your circumstances rather than you kind of dictating your circumstances. And I think, right, Laker fans, that's what they want to see, right? The Lakers, when you think about the Lakers, it's like, hey, Shaq's a free agent. Let's go get him. And then we get him, Here, it kind of feels more right now. They're just kind of stay afloat. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and then this is the thing is that it doesn't matter who they bring in to coach this thing, right? And I agree with you that JJ Redick, I think, is doing a good job. The couple times he's had, he's decisive when he has to be. He gives them a real kick in the butt, right? I mean, he's probably said something bad about almost every player on the team at this point, which, again, you can read that either way, right? I mean, some people are like, hey, they threw another guy under the bus today. But, but the fact that he's been firm about it, he's made like lineup decisions that are kind of consistent with that. It's not, you don't feel that he's just saying it in frustration just to make himself feel better. You feel that this is kind of like a part of a bigger plan. So, yeah, I do think he's going to be a good NBA coach somewhere, right? Whether it's here or not. It's going to, again, depend on like what type of players they're able to get in here. The fact that, again, he's tied to LeBron, my guess is it gives him some rope to, right? He'll have a few years to kind of put this thing together. My feeling is probably that LeBron will be here until his son, can kind of find his footing in this league, assuming that happens at some point. But yeah, it's they're in a bad situation. This thing is not going to get better. And again, my contention has always been that organizations always kind of start at the top, and that's where the change has to be. And frankly, they're not going to sell.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Hey, I appreciate so much time. I know you're a very busy man. I'm glad that you and the family had a good holiday, and we'll do this again before not too long. Maybe after the winter meetings, I'll track you down.
That'd be great. Anytime I'm on with you, Coach, seriously, it's a treat. Like, this is something, I was telling my kid not too long ago, when I was doing like a interview in the car, and he's kind of like asking, like, why do you do this? And it's like, well, when I was like your age, this is like what I wanted to do, and you're one of the guys that I listened to, obviously, when I was back like in middle school and stuff. So every time I do this, it kind of reminds me of like why I'm doing this and why I wanted to do this in the first place. So really appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate all the loyalty and the support over the years as well. Be well, my friend, and thanks again.
All right. See ya.
There you go. Dylan Hernandez from the Los Angeles Times giving us way too much time today, but we try to touch on a little bit of everything, kind of keep everybody up to date with what's going on, not only in San Diego, but all of Southern California. Again, Aztecs play tonight. And like I told my wife this morning, it's going to be a big night of basketball at the Quintero household. Lakers at 4:30, Aztecs at 7:30, taking on Fresno State. Looking forward to that. And also on Friday, we're going to take a look at the Aztec football recruiting. Early signing period started bright and early this morning. We're going to take a look and see how the Aztecs fared in the early signing period. There'll be another signing period in early February. So hopefully Sean Lewis, who was actually last night at the Silver Pigskin Gala, spoke to the crowd. I'll see how he does in his first full cycle of recruiting. Last year he got the job late and didn't have a full year to recruit. We'll see how he fares, and we'll break it down on Friday. John Maffey will be joining us, preview all the Southern California regional football finals on Friday and Saturday. And again, I thank you very much for tuning in. Please subscribe and like the program. Doesn't cost anything. And again, your comments regarding the golden at bat by the Commissioner Rob Manfred, any of your comments on the program today that either things I said or Dylan Hernandez said, love your comments at the bottom of our YouTube page. And again, you can follow me on Facebook at John Quintero and on X at Coach Quintero 44. Have a great day. I'll talk with you again at 9:30 on Friday morning. Bye-bye.